Welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the situation in the Middle East. Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire, and the fragile deal appears to be holding, after U.S. President Donald Trump lashed out at the two countries, warning that they must not violate the agreement. President Trump is in the Netherlands for the NATO Summit, but he gave an ambiguous answer over whether the U.S. will abide by the military alliance mutual defense guarantee, saying it depends on the definition. Today marks 75 years since the outbreak of the Korean War on June 25, 1950. We take a look at how those who fought in the war are remembered. U.S. President Donald Trump urged both Israel and Iran to stick to the ceasefire after tensions flared again shortly after it took effect. Both sides have claimed victory in the conflict, effectively accepting Trump's call for a truce. Our Shinayong starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump gave a strong warning to both Israel and Iran, accusing them of violating the ceasefire that he had announced earlier. According to the Associated Press, Trump on Tuesday expressed frustration with Israel for retaliating against Iran and called Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, urging him to stop the attacks.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel.
Trump also emphasized that he does not want to see regime change in Iran, which he said would lead to chaos.
No, I don't want it. I'd like to see everything calm down as quickly as possible. Regime change takes chaos, and ideally we don't want to see so much chaos.
This comes as tensions flared again just hours after the ceasefire between Israel and Iran took effect on Tuesday. Israel accused Iran of violating the ceasefire with missile launches, while Iran denied the claims. The ceasefire appears to be holding for now, though, after Trump's outburst at both sides. Israel and Iran both claimed victory in their recent conflict. Israel said it had removed two major threats, Iran's nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles.
Dear citizens of Israel, during the 12 days of the Operation Rising Lion, we achieved a historic victory, and this victory will stand for generations.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said on social media that Israel will respect the ceasefire as long as the other side does. The military chief of staff Eyal Zamir said that Israel's military is shifting its focus back to Gaza. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said Tehran would only hit Israel if it violates the ceasefire deal. He also expressed his country's readiness to resolve disputes with the U.S. within an international framework. All eyes are on the coming hours to see whether the ceasefire between Israel and Iran will hold. Shinayong, Arirang News.
So the ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding after U.S. President Donald Trump lashed out at both countries, insisting that the ceasefire was not being put into effect. For more, we're joined by Professor Hassan Khan, visiting professor at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Khan, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So Trump says the ceasefire between Israel and Iran continues to be in effect and that he expects this to last forever. Will the ceasefire hold?
This ceasefire between Israel and Iran remains technically in effect, but it's kind of a precarious, and until now we cannot be sure that we can think that of it as a pause rather than a durable peace agreement. Trump's assertion that it will last forever reflect actually political optimism, not strategic reality. Historically, such truth in the Middle East, like in 2006 Israel-Hezbollah cessation or post-2019 Iran-backed militia truce in Iraq, have proven temporary rather than permanent when underlying issues remained unresolved. From a realist perspective, the absence of structural security guarantees and persistence of mutual threat perception, this ceasefire is vulnerable to to collapse at any provocations.
I see. So we'll have to see if the deal will be sustainable. So what did Israel and Iran gain from the war?
It's a very good question. Israel gained militarily, of course, and symbolically by damaging Iran's nuclear infrastructure, including centrifuge arrays in Natanz and Fordo. It delayed Iran's nuclear progress and reasserted deterrence. These actions reflect Israel's long-standing what we call Begin doctrine, a preventive strategy to eliminate a perceived existential threat, previously also seen in Iraq in 1981 and Syria in 2007. Iran, on the other hand, reinforced its strategic narrative of resistance. Despite heavy losses, Iran showcased its ability to retaliate directly and also via proxies. The alliance with Iran's strategic depth doctrine, which compensates for conventional inferiority by leveraging asymmetric tools to protect itself. Both states reinforced their identities, Israel as a regional enforcers of the red lines and Iran as a resilient revolutionary power.
I see. And will Iran never be able to rebuild a nuclear program, as Trump claims, now that the United States has bombed its nuclear facilities? And was the country actually very close to building a nuclear weapon, like Trump said?
Despite U.S. Airstrikes claims that Iran nuclear program has been eliminated, this is an overstatement. According to the U.S. military intelligence, that the report that the airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities set its program back only a few months. Also, historical precedents show us that external attacks tend to delay but not permanently dismantle nuclear ambitions, especially when political will remain. Iran reportedly several months away from nuclear breakout, not days, as Netanyahu said sometimes. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed Iran had enriched uranium at 60% purity. This is a short technical leap from weapons grade. However, nuclear latency does not equal weaponization. Also, I would argue that Iran pursued a hedging strategy, maintaining the option without actually crossing the threshold, both as leverage and deterrence. Trump's statement served as a political theater than grounded strategic assessment.
I see. And will Iran return to the negotiating table with the United States for nuclear talks? What cards do you think does Iran have left to play?
We are waiting for that to happen, but I think Iran is unlikely to return to direct talks with the US in the near terms. But indirect diplomacy, especially via mediators, European mediators, is already underway. Iran's leverage lies in two domains, material and symbolic. Materially, it retains technical knowledge, centrifuge capacity, and enriched uranium stockpile they have. Symbolically, it maintains influence over key proxies like Hezbollah and Houthis, allowing it to shape regional dynamics. Iran, we have to know that the Iran domestic political structure also constrains its foreign policy. Negotiation is likely, but only on Tehran's terms, primarily lifting sanctions and regime security.
See, and before I let you go, how might the conflict between Israel and Iran affect the broader Middle East, including the ongoing war in Gaza?
Yeah, actually, this conflict is destabilizing variable in the already fragile regional equation. It diverts attention from Gaza crisis, complicates ceasefire efforts with Hamas, and may also embolden non-state actors in the area who interpret Iranian resilience as a green light. In the past, we saw similar dynamics during the 1982 Lebanon War and the 1991 Gulf War, when regional wars either empowered proxy actors or forced strategic recalibration of the actors involved. For the Iran-Israel conflict, this is not isolated from the rest of the region. It's interwoven with the strategic calculations of regional actors like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Gulf states. Furthermore, control over maritime checkpoints like the Strait of Hormuz remains a very critical checkpoint, bargaining chip for Iran. This could have a global implication on the energy securities and echoing a past oil crisis. this geopolitical confrontation spills into global market. We hope that this doesn't happen.
Right, I guess we'll have to see how it goes. All right, Professor Khan, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And Washington on Tuesday reaffirmed the Trump administration's commitment to the complete denuclearization of North Korea after the United States launched strikes at key nuclear sites in Iran over the weekend. When asked whether there was a lesson for Pyongyang to learn from the U.S. strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities, State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce stressed that the administration remained committed to the complete denuclearization of North Korea. However, she added that if the North Korean nuclear issue can't be resolved through dialogue, the State Department was open to speculation on hypotheticals at this point. And U.S. President Trump has arrived at The Hague in the Netherlands to attend the NATO Summit. Now, this year's meeting is in the spotlight as the U.S. leader has repeatedly been critical of the alliance's lack of defense spending. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump arrived at The Hague on Tuesday and began his official activities for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization Summit. Leaders and officials from 32 countries, including President Trump, are scheduled to hold a plenary session of the North Atlantic Council on Wednesday local time, with a press conference scheduled for later that afternoon. The joint statement of this year's summit is expected to include an agreement that all member countries will eventually spend 5% of their GDP on defense, something the U.S. leader has been pushing for. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said on Tuesday that he has no doubt that the U.S. is committed to NATO's Article 5 Mutual Defense Clause. The comment came as Trump raised renewed doubts about his willingness to protect U.S. allies. When asked by a reporter on his way to The Hague whether he's still committed to Article 5, which states that an armed attack against one or more of its members would be considered an attack against all NATO member states, he gave a rather ambiguous answer.
It depends on your definition. There's numerous definitions of Article 5, you know that, right? But I'm committed to being their friends. You know, I've become friends with many of those leaders, and I'm committed to helping them.
Trump has, however, decided not to attend a special meeting with the Indo-Pacific 4 or IP4 countries, including South Korea. According to NATO officials, the U.S.-NATO IP4 meeting scheduled for Wednesday has been changed to a NATO IP4 format. One official said Trump's non-participation was due to scheduling issues. Meanwhile, with a major focus on NATO's defense spending this year, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has pledged to meet the target of 5% of the UK's GDP by 2035. All NATO member countries are also expected to agree to spending 3.5% on core defense issues and the remaining 1.5% on other defense-related areas, such as resilience and security. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea has failed to advance toward developed market status under the MSCI's latest market classification review. The index provider on Wednesday kept the country in its emerging market category, citing limited reforms in the foreign exchange market and restricted access to investment instruments. The MSCI noted that despite some efforts to improve market accessibility, progress has been insufficient, and further talks on Korea's reclassification would require the full implementation of reforms and resolutions to all key issues. The announcement is a blow to Seoul's efforts to eliminate the so-called Korea discount, whereby Korean firms trade at a lower valuation than their global rivals. And President Lee Jae-myung has now launched an online survey in order to gauge public opinion on state affairs. Open from Tuesday, the Google Forms survey titled The People's Mailbox invites anyone to ask questions on the economy, society, politics, diplomacy, and national security. According to the presidential office, all submissions will be reported to the president, who plans to personally respond to those considered timely or widely relatable. The top office says it will continue expanding two-way communication channels to ensure the public stays at the center of policymaking. And today marks the 75th anniversary of the Korean War, and honoring history begins with remembering it. A recent exhibition showcased a project dedicated to photographing Korean War veterans and sharing their stories. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung was there.
An American war veteran with a Korean flag next to him. He is a veteran of the Korean War, one of 1,950,000 soldiers from 22 countries who fought for freedom on the Korean Peninsula. Some call it the forgotten war, but with the belief that the war and veterans' memories should not fade away, photographer Rami has been documenting Korean War veterans under an initiative named Project Soldier. Since it started in 2013, Rami has met more than 2,500 Korean War veterans, recording their stories.
지금까지 2,500여 명의 참전 용사분들이 인터뷰하셨는데 특히 인상 깊었던 인터뷰가 있었나요?
All the interviews were meaningful, but Colonel William Weber stood out. When veterans see their photos that make them feel like real heroes, they often tear up and ask about the price of the frame. I usually say, I'm just repaying a small debt. But Colonel Weber told me I was wrong, that as a professional soldier, he simply did his duty, and Koreans owe them nothing.
Photographer Rami's journey to document the veterans is not just to leave their stories behind. It is to let people know the value of freedom, and that freedom is not free. Sometimes military items were used in the photos to show that.
The helmet is more than just equipment. It has a symbolic meaning of protecting peace and freedom. Each veteran wrote their name, military unit, and service time on a helmet before taking the photo, showing the lasting symbol of the freedom they helped defend.
For freedom to truly endure, the sacrifices of veterans must be remembered, a message that resonates even with soldiers currently serving in Korea. Humboldt once said he was moved by how the photos captured the deep sincerity of senior veterans' commitment to freedom.
Even for me, who's currently still serving, it has inspired me to make sure I do as good as I can every day in support of the ROC, U.S. Alliance, and UNC right now. And then I'm really hopeful that our younger generation can come and see the why life is so great here in Korea.
The photographer now aims to go beyond documenting war veterans to share the stories of those who protect our freedom today.
이분들 다음에도 자유와 나라를 지켰던 수많은 사람들이 있었거든요. 주한미군 베테랑부터 경찰, 소방관. 앞으로는 이분들과 마찬가지로 자유를 지키는 수호자들, Guardians of Freedom, 이런 사람들의 얘기를 더 얘기할 예정입니다.
김보경, 아리랑 뉴스.
And those who lost loved ones during war now get a chance to remember the legacy of love that was lost too soon but never forgotten. Our An Sung-jin files the report of faith restoration for Korean War veterans.
Song Young-hwan. He was only 26 years old when he died on the battlefield during the Korean War. His daughter Song Jae-suk was only 3 years old. She would go to the National Cemetery to remember him, but for her whole life, she knew little about her father and was even unable to picture how he looked.
사실 3살 때 돌아가셨는데 아버지에 대한 추억이 있었겠어요? 그래서 저를 할머니가 키우셨거든요. 그래서 할머니가 늘 하는 얘기가 너 3살 때 어려서 이제 아버지가 늘 안고 다니면서 제숙빵구 빵구 하면서 안고 다니셨대요. 그게 문득 생각나더라고요. 그래서
But after more than 70 years, she was able to see his face. While searching for an uncle who was also a soldier and had gone missing during the war, she had submitted a DNA sample. Surprisingly, she heard back from the Defense Ministry's excavation and identification team that they had matched her sample and her father's remains had been discovered.
감사함도 느끼고. 근데 또 그날 어버이날 행사 가가지고 그분을 뵈니까 아, 이렇게 기적이 있구나. 정말 그 눈물도 나고 마음도 애리고 저도 정말 이렇게 모시게 된 걸 너무 감사드리고 내가 부모님들한테 보은이라고 그럴까? 이런 걸 할 수 있는 게 이런 거 아닌가.
Song was able to receive a restored version of her father's picture through the joint efforts of the National Remains Recovery Team and the National Forensic Service, making it the first completed case of face restoration from remains from the Korean War. Using a CT scanner and 3D modeling software, the National Forensic Service reconstructs the structure of the subject's face, layering on muscles, skin, and shaping the eyes, nose, and mouth.
I had the privilege of taking part in a project that brings forgotten war heroes back to life to honor them. It gave me a deep sense of responsibility. And to help restore the image of who he was in life, we added the combat helmet and uniform that he would have worn at the time of his death.
The goal was to recreate not just a likeness, but a presence. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the Korean War, and there are still so many, like Song Young-won, that remain missing or unidentified. For many families of war veterans, it's the pain of not knowing that never fades. And through efforts like these, the return of these soldiers can become more than a historical footnote. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. A Russian missile strike on Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region has killed at least 26 civilians and injured hundreds in one of the most devastating attacks this week. On Tuesday around midday local time, a Russian ballistic missile attack hit the city of Dnipro and surrounding areas, including the town of Samar. The strike struck a passenger train, schools, kindergartens, a hospital, and other civilian infrastructure. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, attending the NATO Summit in The Hague, condemned the attack as a message of terror and rejection of peace. He urged Western allies to impose tougher sanctions on Russia and supply additional military aid to Ukraine. Russian drones and missiles have struck multiple regions this week, leaving a high civilian toll across Ukraine. In Greece, a state of emergency remains in effect on the island of Chios, where wildfires have been burning for the past 3 days. Hundreds of firefighters have been deployed to contain the blazes before they reach villages and vital farmland. More than 400 firefighters, supported by 14 helicopters, 2 water-dropping planes, and more than 80 vehicles, are fighting multiple fire fronts as strong winds fan the blazes. Forests, olive groves, and some farmland, including areas known for producing Chios's famous mastillas resin, have been devastated. Authorities have evacuated hundreds of residents from more than 20 villages. Greece's Minister for Climate Crisis and Civil Protection confirmed that investigators are looking into the possibility of arson after simultaneous outbreaks in unconnected locations. Costa Rica's former security minister and Supreme Court justice, as well as being a high-ranking official under past administrations, Celso Gamboa Sanchez was arrested in San Jose on Monday on charges of international drug trafficking following a U.S. extradition request from Dallas, Texas. An associate, Edwin Lopez Vega, was also detained. Gamboa's arrest marks the first under Costa Rica's constitutional reform enacted in May, which permits the extradition of nationals for drug trafficking and terrorism, reversing a previous embargo. The public security minister praised the operation as the first of many blows against transnational crime and said Costa Rica will hold suspects accountable within or outside our borders. Eastern parts of the United States are experiencing intense heat dome effect, characterized by oppressive heat and high humidity across New York and its surrounding area. On Tuesday, New York City reached 38 degrees Celsius at JFK Airport for the first time since 2013, as extreme heat warnings covered the entire metropolitan area through 8 p.m. when it was downgraded to heat advisories through Wednesday evening. Experts predict that the heat dome will persist through midweek. Residents have been advised to stay hydrated and limit outdoor exposure during the late morning and afternoon hours.
Monsoon rains will fall in most parts of the country today, with showers across several regions. The rain will begin to clear from the southern regions first, and by tonight it will mostly let up. However, some parts of Gangwon-do and Chungcheon-pukto province could see rain until tomorrow morning. The central region could receive 5 to 30 millimeters of rainfall. The southern regions could see 5 to 10 millimeters of showers, along with strong winds. And with the rain, most areas will see below average temperatures today. Seoul will reach 25 degrees Celsius, which is about 3 degrees lower than yesterday. Daegu gets up to 28. Jeju, however, will be sunny and hot today with a high of 29 degrees Celsius. Looking ahead, rain will return nationwide on Saturday, starting with the capital area on Friday night. And those of us in the capital area should keep an umbrella handy through early next week.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.